Welcome to another episode of Eric Waite Whiskey Studies, and in this video we're going to do a comparison between the Tomatin 12-year-old Fino sherry cask and the Tomatin 12-year-old Manzanilla cask. Now, I've already reviewed both of these whiskeys and did review of Fino sherries and Manzanilla sherries, which are very, very similar. Both of the wines that went into the cask are made from the Palomino grape, grown on Albariza soil. Both are aged biologically under a veil of flora yeast in a Solera fractional blending system, 2 to 7 years. So what's the difference? The Fino sherry is from within the Sherry Triangle, whereas Manzanilla is from the Manzanilla de Sanlúcar, which borders the Guadalquivir River, which has a cooling influence, giving it a fresher style of wine. Both of these whiskeys are part of a unique Cuatro series of 4 limited expressions of Tomatin, double matured in different sherry casks. The Tomatin 12-year-old Manzanilla was aged in American oak for 9 years, then aged in first fill Manzanilla cask for 3 years. It's bottled at 46% alcohol by volume, sells for anywhere between $60 and $80. The Tomatin 12-year-old Fino sherry cask was aged in American oak for 9 years. Then in first fill Fino sherry cask for 3 years. It's also bottled at 46% alcohol by volume and sells for about $65 to $80. So as you can see, the wines that went into the cask are very, very, very similar. Same grape, same soil, same production method. Consequently, they should be very, very similar. The whiskeys as well, similar aging in terms of the American oak and similar amount of time done in the Manzanilla or Fino sherry. Also, both at 46% alcohol by volume and similar in price. So in terms of the wine differences, the big key difference in wine, because wine is very reflective of its terroir, it's going to be the influence of the Guadalquivir River. It's going to be a little bit cooler, so typically those wines should be a little bit fresher. So you go, wow, how much of that is really going to carry over into the whiskey? Presumably, if everything is handled the same, if the stills are run the same, these should be very, very, very similar. The main difference, a slight fresher, perhaps, character to the wine cask. However, there are some other variants which we don't really know about, such as we don't know necessarily that the Manzanilla and the Fino sherry are coming from the same bodegas. I'm assuming they are. I'm assuming that they would probably source a cask from the same bodega, so they would probably be aged in the same place. So there wouldn't be that big of a difference. Also, we don't know the age of the Fino or the Manzanilla and how, because they could be from 2, say, to 7 years. So there could be some differences in there as well. But generally speaking, they should be very, very, very similar. So the question I have is, are these whiskeys basically tasting the same, just with 2 different names? One's Manzanilla and the other one is Fino. Or is there going to be some real significant difference between these 2 whiskeys? So I know a lot of viewers watch Whiskey Tubers because they're looking to buy whiskeys. The purpose of this video series isn't just necessarily, hey, you should go buy this whiskey or you should go buy this whiskey or not buy them, but rather to understand the influence and the impact of what you're typically going to get from a Fino cask or a Manzanilla cask, whether you are tasting these whiskeys or some others. So here are a few other whiskeys aged in Fino casks. Other Fino sherry cask whiskeys to check out include the Aaron Malt Fino cask single malt Scotch whisky, the Deanston Fino cask Finish Highland single malt Scotch whisky, the Kilchoman Fino sherry cask matured Islay single malt Scotch whisky, the Lefroy Cartius Fino cask Finish Islay single malt Scotch whisky. Likewise, here are a few other whiskeys aged in Manzanilla casks. Other whiskeys aged in Manzanilla to check out include Ardbeg Islay single malt Scotch whisky, Bowmore 18-year-old Manzanilla cask aged Islay single malt Scotch whisky, Bunnahabhain Manzanilla Islay single malt Scotch whisky, and the Cavalon Manzanilla cask strength single malt whisky. So the real point of this video is, what can you expect to get in aromas and flavors from these types of casks. Whether you buy these limited edition bottles or you buy some other whiskey bottles aged in either Manzanilla or Fino. Likewise, if you're buying sherry cask or Oloroso sherry, Pedro Havana cask, whether you're trying the actual whiskeys that I'm going to be reviewing in this series, you should probably want to learn what can you typically expect from these type of casks. There are things that you're typically going to get from rum casks. There are things you're typically going to get from Cabernet Sauvignon casks, Sauternes casks, port casks, a lot of other different types of casks. So that's really the thing you want to pick up, whether you buy these whiskeys or not. Or you say, you know what, that doesn't really sound like a aroma and flavor profile that I want to try, so maybe I don't want to get into these types of casks. Alright, so let's try these whiskeys side by side on the nose and on the palate, see if there's any significant difference between a Manzanilla cask and a Fino cask. If you haven't seen my original review of these two whiskeys, you want to check them out, because in those videos I also provide information about the production process of the wines that went into the cask, and I did a review of the wines that would give you sort of an understanding of the flavor and aroma profile that would then be carried over into these whiskeys. Alright, so let's start with the Tomatin 12-year-old Fino cask. Now, of course, there could be other differences as well that aren't necessarily coming from the cask. It could be, you know, just different bottlings, different casks. I mean, one Fino cask could be different from another Fino cask. One Manzanilla cask can be different from another Manzanilla cask, even from the same bodega. So what we're looking at here is not necessarily any major, huge differences, but the subtle nuances, and see if we can figure out or attribute to the differences being the Fino from the sherry or the Manzanilla. Both of them have typical dried apple, dried pear, a little bit of sultanas, golden raisins. Both of them have that nutty character, the marzipan, slight salty sea breeze, a little bit of lighter caramel. The differences between these two are so subtle, smelled blind, I don't know if you'd be able to tell the difference between the two. They are very, very, very similar. If anything, I would say the Manzanilla cask is giving me a slight more nutty note, but that's not that huge. All right, on the palate. Sweet, dried apples and pears up front. A little bit of a honey character I don't think I was picking up before. It's silky smooth. It is sort of round and mouth coating. Getting some of the vanilla in the mid palate. So it starts off sweet, goes dry towards the back end, get a little bit of that nuttiness. There's that hint of saltiness, some lighter caramels, perhaps even some vanilla. There is a buttery sauce character that reminds me a little bit of a pot still whiskey, say from Ireland. It's got a real nice long finish. The Manzanilla, it is very, 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 very similar. These are essentially like twin brothers. The differences between them is so minute, I seriously doubt the average person would be able to pick up the difference between the two. It has that sort of half dried, half fresh fruit of apples and pears, vanilla, lighter caramels up front. Starts off sweet. At about 3/4 of the way back, it goes dry. A little bit of that nuttiness. Both of these have this, it's like the interior part of a candy bar or a peanut butter cookie. Finishes dry and has a medium to medium plus length and finish. Similar in development, similar mouthfeel in terms of being a very gentle dram, mouth coating, sort of a creamy, soft feel to it, and a nice lingering finish. If I was blinded and I was tasting one, and then someone gave me the other glass, I would not be able to tell you with any kind of measurement of certainty that someone had changed glasses on me. They are almost basically, for all intents and purposes, basically the same profile. Both of them are absolutely fantastic. Really, really like them. I'm getting to become a bigger fan of Tomatin. I like the mouthfeel of these whiskeys. I like the mouth coating feel to it. I like the softness to it. And they both have really great development. I like that they both start off sweet and finish nutty with a little bit of saltiness on the back end. It's a really nice lingering finish. Both of them are fantastic whiskeys. So if you can find either one of them, you know, they're in that somewhere between 60 and 80 bucks, depending on where you're shopping at. If you can find either one of them, I would highly recommend either one of them. They're fantastic. However, for the purpose of this study, is there a significant difference between the Fino cask and the Manzanilla cask? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no. I would say, you know, I really, really enjoyed drinking the wines that I had before reviewing the whiskeys and recording these videos. I would say the bigger difference, because I tasted a couple different Fino sherries and I tasted a Manzanilla sherry. The main difference between the Fino sherries was, I think it was the producer. I think one of the Fino sherries was a little younger, one had a little bit more age, and that was the biggest difference between the wines. Other than that, very similar flavor and aroma profiles. And I gotta say, for these whiskeys, these are twin brothers. These are twin brothers. Both of them are fantastic, but for the purpose of the study, there is no significant difference in the profile that they're providing with these two whiskeys. Alrighty, that's it for this particular whiskey study. If you like watching my videos, I would ask that you subscribe, ring the bell to be notified when I go live, and if you're one of my Patreon supporters, I want to thank you very much. Until next time, cheers. Hey, don't forget to subscribe and check out these other whiskey videos.